All right, I think we're good to go, and I think my microphone is working. So hello, everyone, and to everyone who watches this after the fact. I am clearly in a hotel room because I'm on the road. And while on the road today, I had a thought that I wanted to run by all of you and a discussion. And that is whether or not Norse paganism is actually declining in popularity, both as an actual like spiritual religious practice, but also in like just in everything. And what brought upon this thought is when looking at my like analytics for this last year. For the first time, I mean, I obviously talked about Celtic themed videos more. Oh my gosh, I hope. Let me know if the mic is not working. I don't ever trust the microphone on these things. So if you can't hear me, let me know. But the main thing, yeah, is like this last year, my Norse videos fell in popularity quite a bit. I mean, it was the backbone of this channel for a long time. And yet, recently, my Celtic videos have been skyrocketing in popularity. And they're actually like the top 10 videos on this channel now are all Celtic based, which is really weird. Like, this is something new. And so it's made me think for a while now, like, is this actually the trend? And I was actually shocked at a lot of the videos I made while in Scandinavia. Like, this is supposed to be like, I made it. I'm in Scandinavia talking about Norse paganism. But I found that a lot of the videos I made in Scandinavia were actually not doing very well. So from my personal perspective of a content creator, it seems like people are searching like Norse paganism related topics less. And so I actually did do a little bit of research, and it is actually falling in popularity. So I'm going to show you this graph. This is just Google Trends, and obviously this is going to be backwards for you, I think. But you can actually see on this graph here, this is where we're at right now, is down here. So that's the peak. This is like 2.5 years ago, searching terms on Norse paganism, and we've actually fallen that far on interest as well. So really interesting that this is where we've kind of ended up. And so I really just wanted to start a discussion with all of you of what you thought about this. Is it something that you notice as well? What this means, because there's a benefit and a negative side to this. Whenever something becomes popular and trendy, of course, is when you have something that's becoming popular, you have more and more attention put to it. That's because there's money involved now. And I think we all saw this over the last couple of years as Norse paganism became more popular and the trends started coming in. We saw all the TikTok videos, right? My mother told me, and things like that, but not even before then. We had Vikings. Vikings peaked probably 3 or 4 years ago, maybe even longer ago, and then Vikings Valhalla came and kind of disappeared. Last Kingdom came and disappeared. And then the big thing for my channel personally, for this channel, was video games. The largest viewership spike in the early days of this channel was talking about Vikings Valhalla, and then the hype around Vikings Valhalla when that came out. So that's when this channel blew up. It was around that, and it's directly related to a video game coming out. And then there was some lesser extent with God of War and both the God of War games. But when we look at it, at this media hype, it's also disappearing. This Vikings trend is dying out, if not already dead. And so that's kind of, again, like my thoughts on this lately. So I'm going to take some pauses. I have some notes here. I'm going to take some pauses, read through some stuff, and then get through everything I want to talk about here. I don't think this will take an hour, but I do only have an hour for this before I have to have another meeting. So yeah, these are kind of my thoughts so far, is, why this is happening. And I think it's definitely because media hype is dying down. I don't think this necessarily means it's dead. I don't, like I obviously put in the tag, like, is it disappearing? I think it's definitely lessened. I definitely think the interest in Norse pagan related subjects is less. I think, the Google search thing shows that. And I think less people are getting interested because there's less media to bring people in. There's a benefit to this in the sense that you have less, Vikings hype, the Brosatrus, the people that are just like, yeah, I want to go to Valhalla. It's like we are losing that. And something, and we'll talk about this more later, is, personally with me is, someone that came in with that wave of interest with Vikings and things like that. And as Heilung was coming up, I mean, basically, as Heilung started getting more popular, as Wardruna started getting more popular, as Vikings started becoming more popular, I was a part of that wave of people that got into Norse paganism kind of through these medias and these mediums. And so, I've been around for a while now. Like I've been, making YouTube videos for nearly 5 years, talking about these subjects. And I've definitely seen a lot of people come and go. I've seen a lot of content creators come and go that talk about this. I've seen a lot of people who've come in like, so passionate about it, and then, disappear or burn themselves out. And it's kind of wild to think that, some of the dozens of people that I talked to in the early days of starting this channel aren't even pagan anymore. So it's really interesting to look back on and think. And the more I begin to meet people from the larger pagan umbrella, particularly when I was in England and Scotland, and we're talking about paganism, it tends to happen like this. At least since paganism has been observed since like the 50s and 60s. Is it seems like there's usually a rise because of something, and then there's a fallout, and then a rise and a fallout, and each time it gets a little bigger. So I would argue that we are actually in a decline of overall pagan interest. So I actually did do another graph, and this is actually, sorry, again, this is like reverse. So this is actually Norse paganism on the bottom, and then this is Wicca. So Wicca actually has declined as well, which for the longest time, Wicca is the most popular pagan variant. I remember doing research a couple of years ago, and like Wicca used to get like 1 million hits a month, whereas like Norse paganism would only get like 17,000 searches a month. It was like seriously that different. And so to look back and see 2.5 years ago, Wicca was very popular, and now it's even declining as well. Now, this could also be because, we all undeniably see the world is in a very strange place right now. With COVID, it didn't, that was like kind of the herald of things getting weird. And, and the world has become so different than I know. I turned 30 this year. I know it's so different than when I was young. I know it's so different than, 5 years ago. COVID really changed a lot. I think it woke us up a lot to what's happening in the world. And, it's been very weird for all of us, I think, especially in this 30, 25 to 35 range, watching all this craziness happen in the world. And so I think that definitely has an effect on religion and interest in things like that too. And I also think that a lot of people are getting into spirituality, but less so paganism. I think spirituality, as far as like, self-help is, stronger than ever. But as far as like people getting into the deified version of this, where you actually are putting gods to this, it seems to be falling out, at least from my perspective. Again, I only have a limited perspective. I'm mostly coming at this from, the internet searching. It could just be a lot of people are getting off the internet. I mean, shoot, I'm one of the people that tell people to get off the internet. I myself have taken a pretty big step back from the internet. I'm not very involved in Instagram anymore. Really, this is my only platform that I feel like I invest a lot of time into. Because I think it's the most beneficial to people to watch these longer form videos. And not to mention that, with the advent of TikTok, it's making Instagram less and less enjoyable because essentially you have to become a reel maker. You essentially have to beg to, bow down to the TikTok way of doing things in order to get good content and to get content pushed out there. Seriously, every time I make just a post on Instagram, I lose 100 to 200 followers. Because they just don't get pushed at all. And then, there's always bots and things like that. So unless I make a reel, content does go very far on Instagram. So this could be a factor in it. It could be that just like there are, just the same amount of Norse pagans as there always has been. And there's more and more every day. And people are just not going online anymore. And I think this is just a trend in general. I talk to more and more people every day that no longer have a social media presence and are walking away from it because they're very tired of it, very tired of the polarization and the way it makes us act as people. That's one of the best things about all this travel I've been doing is that of talking to people with alternative perspectives that you feel like if you talked online, you would be in conflict with one another. But I've had nothing but amazing conversations with almost every single human being that I've met in my travels because we just treat each other with respect. And that's amazing. That's what we want in the world, right? We want conversations, even with opposing ideologies, where we're just like, I see your point. Let's continue to debate this, continue to discuss it without getting so much conflict. So we'll take a pause there and let you take for a second. There's 92 people watching this, so that's really cool. So I'm going to go through some of the comments here, see what you guys are saying. You're very talkative, which I like that. Please keep that going. Ryan says it could be likely due to the media like Vikings and such that were popular and over now. Definitely agree. I mean, I don't even know of anything coming out in the future here that is actually going to be like Vikings media besides like Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice 2. and obviously Heilung being tied to that. But Heilung, while doing a lot of Norse things, again, when you look at Heilung, and again, we'll get more to this later with the putting ourselves into a box. Heilung is a little bit more eclectic than we give them credit for. If you look at their album list, they talk about a lot of different things. Like obviously the Norse element is a part of that, but there's a lot of stuff behind Heilung that necessarily isn't Norse pagan. A lot of people agreeing that the Vikings TV show, as shitty as it to say, I believe a lot of people's interests are linked to other things in pop culture, like Vikings TV show, and they lose interest. I think people jumped on the TV show bandwagon, so I think, yeah, for sure. Christopher Rowley, I've met a lot of younger people recently that are, I call hippie Christian. They look like very alternative, are into crystal spirits, animism, but also into Jesus. So I do think that especially in America, this is something that, talking to Europeans, it's really hard to get them to understand, is the fact that American Christian evangelicalism is actually growing. I'm pretty sure, if I remember this correctly, it's growing right now. It's not declining like it is in most countries in the world. A lot of people are actually going back to church, getting more involved in the church, and in particular young people as well. But it's, again, getting wrapped into these like modern spiritual movements. And so I think a lot of people are starting to do crystals and yoga and meditations, all wrapped into Christianity as well. And maybe this is a strategy by the church to attract younger people, is to start getting more involved in these kind of new age things and wrapping up Jesus into it. I definitely have noticed in the spiritual retreats I go to, most people either don't talk about it or aren't. They don't have like a specific spiritual practice. They don't actually usually have a deified practice. And it definitely seems like when I talk about like a god or a goddess within a spiritual practice, that even people in spiritual circles are like, ooh, it's not really for me. Like when I went to Ecuador, I was in the minority. There's 14 of us there for this ayahuasca retreat. And very few of us had a deity-based practice. Most people had just a general spiritual, animistic, approach. But I don't even think they would use the term animistic. They really just kind of believe in spirituality in general. I wonder what the stats are long-term for practice or identification with paganism. It's so hard to say. And that's one of the things, is like not every country counts paganism as like a recordable thing. I know the United States, I think you can fit other in the census. I think this is a census year, but there is no Norse pagan selection or pagan selection, I think, in the US. I think at most, countries will do Wicca, I think, if they do anything. So, it's really hard to get an estimate of how many people there are. And then again, from my travels, I think a lot of people fit into this, they probably are pagan category, but they just kind of, go to the festivals and drink the mead and don't think about it. Oh, this is going to be spicy. If you got into the faith for a show or a popular thing, you were false from the beginning. The true believers won't miss anyone who thought it was a trend. It's very aggressive, but then, why are you watching this video? Because I came into it from that. And I think that's a very negative way of looking at things. I think it's great that media, like especially things like, Heilung. I know so many people who got spiritually interested because of a Heilung and their music, or Lord Druna. And so it's just like, yes, Vikings is cringy. Yes, Vikings Valhalla is extra cringy. But I don't think, and there's people that come and go. Like I said in the very beginning, I saw a lot of people come into this with a lot of fire, including myself, but not everyone stuck around. But I think even if 20% of the people that got into it for these TV shows stuck around, I think that's still a very good thing. And those people are still on the path now, still learning, and can become better. We're in that adolescent phase. And yes, people might have got into it through TV shows, and they might have acted like children in the very beginning, but they're growing up. And I think that's one of my biggest critiques of the people who have been pagan for a long time, especially the ones who look down on people that come into these things through TV shows, is yes, there was an adolescence period, but you can't just kick children out because they're annoying. We need to help people. And I still see that now, being in paganism for 9 or 10 years now, something like that. I'm losing track of time, but making content for 5 years, I've seen that annoyance. Like I'll meet someone who's new, and I feel that, right? I feel that cringe of like, ooh, I remember when I was you, but because I've been through that, because I came into this through like a wave of interest through media, and then have done the work, have done the research, have traveled and actually really got into it. Even though I can get annoyed by people getting into it for the first time, I was them at one point. And I think it's the duty of the older generation, even though I'm barely the older generation of pagan now, to help as much as we can and understand that not everyone's going to stick around. But I think we have a duty to the younger generation, and I think that goes to many different things in our lives, not just spirituality. We have a lot of young people who are very lost right now in this world. And, I'm not an old person, but I'm definitely, again, I turned 30 this year. And so I can look at people in their, early 20s getting into paganism, be annoyed by them, but understand that we need to help them at the same time, so they can become, better people for this world, so we can make this world a better place. It's actually due to the lack of Northern Traditions podcast. It's all my fault. Yeah, so I'll comment on that. I'll comment on that. So the Northern Traditions podcast is officially over. Obviously it's been on hiatus for a very long time. It's just myself, Caleb, and Ian are living very separate lives now. We all are still friends. It's just, I travel all the time. Ian is, involved in so many different interests and things like that now. And Caleb is in a mine half the time of the year. He's literally in a coal mine. He has trouble recording a podcast from a coal mine. But I have good news. So I'm actually, I was invited to be on a new podcast with a old channel member, someone who I've had on here before, Kubi from Glastonbury, actually invited me to be on, I forget what we're calling it. I think it's the Tree of Life podcast. And I'm going to talk about things from a Norse perspective and her from a Celtic perspective. So yeah, we're going to experiment with. I think we're recording that very soon. So there is going to be another podcast here soon. I mean, it's something I've wanted to do. Even Caleb wanted to try, and Ian to some extent. But yeah, we just couldn't make it work. We tried. It was a great run, 100+ episodes. It's sad to see it go, but yeah, I think it is officially done. Okay. Let's see. In your experience, when people leave paganism, where do they tend to go? What do they tend to go to? So I think a lot of people just go to atheism. So I think a lot of people, when they get into paganism, they get into it hard, and then they chase that rush, because I think a lot of people, again, including myself, got into paganism because they had some kind of ecstatic experience with the gods. A lot of times it's Odin. That's how it was for me. And I think you almost chase that like a high, is you keep trying to do the next craziest thing. You try to get into the next big thing or the next deity, and you're chasing that rush of excitement. But in reality, it's not, it kind of goes away because it becomes part of your life. And that's what you want. You want this to become a part of your everyday life. The offerings I give now are so much smaller. The moments I enjoy now are so much smaller, but it's just because paganism has become a part of my everyday existence. And it's beautiful. I've never been happier in my life than now. And it's because I've allowed paganism to just become part of this every day. And I think a lot of people have a struggle with that. And so I think they chase that ecstasy. And then when they can't find it anymore, they're like, oh, this must have all been bullshit. I'm leaving it behind. And so I find that most people end up going atheist once they leave paganism, because I think they've burned themselves out. Okay, you guys are very talkative. I really like that. Let's see. Let me see if I can find one more. Someone talked about ayahuasca here. The ayahuasca has you searching after alien gods. I mean, dude, let me tell you, the shit I saw. But yeah, I kind of want to move on to the next thing here. And it's just a reminder of monetization, because I remember someone actually brought this up in the like the pre-show. Sorry, my hair is like really bothering me right now. That's why I don't like doing live streams. There we go. So there's always one way to flip it. And so yeah, monetization is a big thing of Norse paganism that I think it's good to start seeing it go away. And like I remember, what was it, 3 years ago or 2 years ago, I was asked to write a rune book, and they wanted it. They literally were going to control what I wrote in the rune book. They were like, no, because I told them like, oh, I'm really into Galder chanting. This is my thought on this rune. This is my thought on this rune. And they're like, ooh, that's great, but that's not what we want. We want you to write the rune book we want, and you're going to write exactly this. You're going to write about this runic divination technique. We already had someone write the history section. You're just going to write this section. And I was like, ooh, I don't like that at all. And they were only going to pay like $3,000 flat, no royalties, nothing. And so it really became like a factory. And I think it's also, there was a lot of businesses that came out of this too. Like, oh my gosh, I think a lot of them are gone now. But a lot of the really cheap jewelry businesses that popped up just drop shipping garbage onto everyone. I mean, this is nothing against anyone that's bought any of this stuff, because I'm sure I've bought some along the way. But man, I remember it being really bad a year or two ago, the amount of drop ship garbage that was coming out of the Norse pagan Viking world. There's still some of it out there. But I hope that this is one of the benefits of getting out of this kind of trend popularity era, is that we're actually going to be able to sift through all this crap and find really good creators that really, really care, and we can support them more. And I hope it can continue to be like that. Like, again, this, like, this Mjolnir, this came from Vol here. Met him in person, amazing dude. I had lost my Mjolnir, and he was like, dude, here you go. And it's like, now it has a story. And so whenever I can, I do my best to support him as a creator. And I think, the inner communication I have between other content creators, crafters and stuff like that, it's really beautiful. So I'm still really happy with the world, that the community at large, because there's just some amazing people in there. But maybe we'll be able to find those amazing people a little easier now. But yeah, so monetization in general, I think, was a bad thing for the most part. It's good to have like that support around it a little bit, to bring money to creators. But it's definitely dying down. I definitely think that the monetization of Norse paganism is dying down a lot. So one of the other things I wanted to bring up here is it even healthy to put things into a box of such as Norse paganism? And because I've received a lot of comments recently, people, the ayahuasca video, a couple of people commented, they're like, oh, you're not even Norse pagan anymore, you're doing ayahuasca in South America. Or people, when I started going to Scotland and making Celtic pagan videos or Scottish pagan videos, they're like, oh my gosh, he's not a Norse pagan anymore, I can't watch you. These are the kind of hate comments I get these days. It's usually someone's like, oh, I didn't like the subject you talked about, unfollowed. It's like, oh, there's a lot of subjects out there. And I think I had this thought last year, when I changed the title of this channel away from the Wisdom of Odin to just Jacob Todson. And it's because I did want to start talking about more things, because I think there's such a rich amount of information about paganism out there from various communities in the world. What I can learn from South America and doing ayahuasca and looking at their artifacts and talking to their shamans and eating their food can influence how I am as a Norse pagan. I still see myself as a Norse pagan in the sense that I think I've mentioned this a few times. I still see everything in the Norse cosmology. But, again, I've always been very close to Odin worship. And to me, Odin is a wanderer. Odin goes and learns from other people, other cultures. And, again, doing like things like ayahuasca, like, this could be just a representation of Odin going to Mimir's well, making a sacrifice to gain knowledge. That's how I choose to see this experience. Other people might not agree with me. But my exploring of other cultures, my research into other pagan traditions, these are all part of my way to connect to Odin, all my way to connect to this idea of wisdom and wandering. But the more and more I learn, the more I'm starting to see the commonalities and connections between everyone. And I think a good example of this is what I'm doing up here. I'm in Wisconsin right now, actually, was where I'm at. And I'm going up to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And so I'm going up there to film a festival called Heikki Lunta. Heikki Lunta is a festival where basically the people of this area made up a god to celebrate winter. And that there's some folklore and stuff like that I'll go into in the video. But it kind of begs this question, does it really matter what you're calling winter? If you're calling it Skadi or Uller or Fimbulvinter or Heikki Lunta or whatever, like Demeter, whatever deity you call it. At the end of the day, we're all ultimately just venerating and worshiping winter as a god or a goddess, and you're just honoring that season. And so I think I can go to a Beltane Fire Festival and and appreciate it, the turning of the season. Because I appreciate the turning of the season. I appreciate the return of spring, and so it doesn't really matter if it's a Celtic or an Irish or a Scottish celebration. Like, I am there to celebrate the return of spring, just like them. So that's kind of my thought on that. And so I'm back and forth on it, because I do think having boundaries is good within your spiritual practice, of not making it too broad. But I feel like I've only benefited myself in my personal spiritual practice, my connection to the Norse gods and the way I see the spiritual world, I've only been benefited by the more I have expanded my interests, my knowledge, my learning, and my communication with other people. I get so excited learning about basically every religion in the world, usually besides Christianity. And like I'll read about a religion in Nigeria, and it's like I'm not going to go worship Nigerian gods, but I love learning about it. I love to see their traditions. Same thing with South America. I had no true spiritual connection to South America. Let me tell you, I ain't moving there. There are way too many bugs. It is too hot, and yeah, just not my place. But the people there were amazing. The culture and the history there was amazing, and I feel like everything I learned from that really benefited me personally. And so I think traveling, learning from other cultures is only beneficial. So I don't think putting yourself into a spiritual box is always a good thing. And I don't think it's a bad thing to look outside that box and learn from everyone and share, because that's part of the human experience, especially in our global world. So yeah, let me read through some of these comments. Let me know what your thoughts are. So I'll get through these a little bit here. But what are your thoughts on this terminology of saying I'm a Norse pagan, I'm a Celtic pagan, I'm a Greek pagan? What are your thoughts on these things? Some people I'm sure that would watch this are like, oh, he's just eclectic now. I know a lot of people these days are using the term animist, and I think it's a little bit more universal, like just believing in the spirits and everything, rather than looking at this deified practice. I do think that from what we know of Norse beliefs, I do think Norse beliefs are still polytheist. I don't think necessarily it's animistic, but again, it's interesting because you look at the Finns, who are very closely related, and they are a little bit more animistic. But is that just because we don't know that much about their gods and their deity worship? Again, these are a lot of interesting questions, and a lot of times we don't know the specific answers, and we can just go based on how we feel now. All right, let me scroll up here. Hail from Milwaukee. Welcome to Wisconsin. Yeah, I actually just drove through Milwaukee. I'm up in Green Bay right now. I'll be heading out really early though. Like I ended up stopping because honestly, I have a lot of work to do. Taking the time off in Ecuador is amazing. I am so lucky and grateful to live a life where I can take 2 or 3 weeks off of work to go do ayahuasca in the jungle. Thank you, everyone who supports this channel to allow me to do these things. But I know I have to come back and do more work. So I'm doing a video up here, hopefully doing another video down in Illinois. And then I got good things coming, a lot of really good plans. I'm talking to a lot of amazing people right now. Be excited for what's coming up. But yeah, there's Kevin says there's nothing wrong with learning and walking multiple paths. Yeah, I agree as well. I met a traveling river guide where I work. He made me a trinket and I never saw him again. Very mysterious. Thank you, Orion, for reminding people to do good things. Oh no, I hate when it refreshes. Okay, here we go. Aaron Elmore. Couldn't it be argued that all gods are egregious or egregious forms of the human mind? I'm terrible at English, guys. Trying to personify and understand forces of nature that did not understand or felt were immensely powerful. So this is kind of my philosophy on gods in general. I end up in this conversation a lot, especially with people who don't necessarily believe in gods, and they see things as more of a personification of the self. And I think it's both. I think there is an element of spirituality that is just becoming aligned with your body. I think there are certain gods that we personify in the body, and that's what we're connecting with. And then we can look at things like the earth, like Jord, and you can look at that and be like, yeah, like I don't necessarily think it's a female deity per se, but it's still the ground and the planet and our home. It feels very motherly. It births us. It keeps us safe. It provides for us. And so I think there's still an element of deified worship, even though like I don't think it's actually like a physical being that we're worshiping. It's just the earth that we're worshiping. Or the sun is a great example of this. Is the sun. Do I think that the sun has like intelligent thought? That I actually don't know. I mean, it's so hard to say. Like, well, we're sitting here saying we do. We have intelligent thought and choices and things like that. Well, what about the gigantic ball of fire that is like hundreds of times bigger than our planet, millions of times bigger than us? What is that? To me, it can almost be called a god because it's like we just don't understand what the sun is. It's just a ball of energy that keeps us alive. So it's hard to say. I definitely think there's an element to argue that just because we understand something scientifically doesn't necessarily mean we don't understand, can't connect to it spiritually. And then again with my own personal shamanic journey, going into spiritual work, into healing, there obviously is the spiritual world, and then once you start interacting with the spirit world, again, you can interact with yourself. I had that in ayahuasca a lot. Is I saw a lot of personifications in my own body, but then I also had interactions with deities. I've had interaction with spirits while doing just trance journeys, no medicine involved. And so I think the answer lies in the middle of whether or not the gods are real, if they're actual beings, or these personifications of the self. But hopefully that answered your question, or at least gave some insight into that question. Someone said they don't like being in a box. I often say I'm a Northern Traditions pagan, but in reality, I'm an eclectic, and I always have been. And that's a good segue as well into the Fellowship of Northern Traditions. That's why we went with that name, because again, we felt like we needed some kind of box for the nonprofit, and the Northern Traditions felt like a good box because a lot of us fit into either Norse or Celtic, Germanic a little bit, but recognizing that all these things kind of come together in a very unified, really good way. And especially after spending time in Scotland and understanding how fucked it is there, like as far as like the history of the people that have lived there, the Pictish history, the pre-Pictish history, the people who are building these ancient monuments, and then you have the Gaelic invasion, the Gaelic colonization of Scotland, and then you have the Norse invasion of Scotland. You have the Britons there, and then of course Christianity coming into there. So there's so many mixtures of beliefs in Scotland. It's just a mess, So it's definitely, it's really hard to say like what is Scottish belief. That's actually something I'm going to be exploring here pretty soon. Is what is the original belief of Scotland? It's really hard to say. Can you imagine Odin's wandering path being gate kept from southern climate knowledge? Yeah, I mean that's when someone again, I don't care if they watch this and they think this, but someone was talking. I had several comments, people like, "Ooh, I can't believe you went to South America." It's like I can't believe you're learning from those people. It's like that's exactly what Odin would do. I think a lot of people really misunderstand what it means when, like, obviously people say Odin's the all father, not the son father. I've never particularly liked that because I find Odin to be a dick sometimes, and so it's like I don't think he likes everyone. As far as like a deity, but I do agree the fact that Odin, is definitely a global god. I don't, and he's a very complex god, and I think that's one of the reasons he's so attractive in the Norse pantheon is because he's not just the god of the harvest, a god of the hunt, or a god of war. He is so complex and has so many elements, and I think you definitely see that in the Wandering in his stories. If it doesn't matter, like in the world, there could be an Odin story of this wandering old man seeking knowledge. Let's see what else we got here. I'll answer a couple more things here. Hey, I'm a pagan since 2019. I don't think the Norse paganism is losing popularity. I found many pagans in Germany. They even work with deities like Hel, or I'm working with Balder, Odin, and Loki. Yeah, and I think that kind of goes to, I think a lot of people, especially in my time living in Germany, the online pagan presence in Germany is like very, very quiet, very non-existent in my experience, and very closed off. And I do think that the groups that are there are very tight knit, are local, and kind of keep to themselves, and probably grow pretty slowly. But I think it's probably been that way for a very long time, and I think that's true in a lot of European countries, of people who are still pagan. Is if they're not seeking to really grow, but they're also not shrinking. I think they're just still going. So if you get into them, if you get into those groups, it is good, but it is sometimes very hard to get into those groups, especially as an outsider. Let's see here. Saw Logan and Mary into the chat. That's cool. See Del, you're in here too. But cool. So let's see here. I kind of went into my personal thoughts as well here, as far as like this subject. Yeah, I think that kind of covered a lot. I do think, to kind of go back to the main topic of this video, is Norse paganism disappearing? Disappearing, no. I don't think it is, but I do think that the media hype is dying, and that's going to come with benefits and downsides. With less media attention, it's going to be harder to find resources, I think, and there's going to be less money put into it. This is something I became very akin to in Norway. is Norway only really started putting money into researching ancient Norway when Vikings hype became big, because they realized they could make money on it. That's Norway is very, very focused on money. And so if they can't make a buck off something, or a lot of bucks, they don't want to invest time into it. And so I think because of the interest in pagan subjects, particularly Norse paganism, we started seeing more looking into these subjects. Like a lot of the research in Trondheim when I was there was done only 5 years ago. Before then, it was almost non-existent, the research into their ancient history. It was kind of just wrote down 500 years ago and accepted. But now they're actually putting the time and money into researching more into the ancient history of Trondheim. Which, again, if you've watched that video, please do. It's one of my favorite videos I've made, because I really feel like I got onto something there. Like, I think there really is a hidden religious history of Trondheim, Norway, and it's going to require a lot more than just me talking about it, and it's going to take money and time and more people looking into this. But it's turning out beneath the surface, there is a lot of history to Trondheim. And so with the dying of hype is the lesser interest from the larger companies, from the governments, from the research institutes. So that will be a downside of this, but I do think the upside is there's going to be a lot more genuineness to it. I was talking about this with a close friend the other day, is there was a lot of disingenuousness over the last few years of the hype of people coming in, being pagan for a day and acting like they own it. And I can be accused of this at times as well. I think I've definitely calmed down in my older years, but and I'm glad I have, but it again did to take me some time. Let's see here. What about Sweden with Johan Hegg and Amana Marth? So Sweden, I feel like, has always done a pretty good job of preserving the history. I find it very hard to find Swedes that actually want to talk about the spiritual aspect of it. I've found very few Swedes in my time there that actually like proclaim to be pagan or practicing. Again, they typically fall into the more spiritual category. But Sweden in general does a very, very good job. I think Sweden does the best job of any of the Scandinavian countries as far as preserving their history and heritage and their beliefs. I mean, their museums there are truly incredible. I think they've done a really good job preserving the rune stones and the rock carvings at Tanum. So very, very big into Sweden. Oh my. Trying to see here if there's any good questions. If you guys have any questions, please ask them. I am going to have to get off here in just a couple of minutes. But I was going to kind of talk about what's ahead for the channel right now, because again, I just got back from Ecuador. And so I know I took a lot of time off there, but one of the big things that came through is I'm excited to come back to work. I mean, I'm driving in total like 12 or 14 hours to get up here to film a video, I'm just excited to get back to this. I really love what I do. I love making the content I do. And I'm actually going back to Scotland here soon. Of course I am. So I'll be going back to Scotland here soon, and maybe have a couple good interviews lined up, a couple really good videos I'm going to be filming in Scotland. And then after that, I'm going to be producing content for Ireland. This is something that I've been planning for a very long time. And there's going to be a period basically while I'm in Ireland, which is about a month of time, where I will not produce any videos. But I really want to get to producing seasons of content for this channel. And this content in these seasons will be very well put together, very well edited, and they've been in planning for like 6 months now, and are going to see their come to fruition in April. And so I have a lot of really great interviews lined up and a lot of really great things coming for this Irish content. But I'll need about a month off to film and edit and begin the editing process. Right now, I'm looking at about 10 videos to get done while I'm in Ireland in just 3 weeks. So I'll be spending 3 weeks of constant filming. I'm going to get a camper van and just drive across Ireland and meet people and film, and then come back and start to edit. And then after that, I have a good amount of content planned for Norway and doing some more content there. And then after that, I have luckily secured my first ability to go to Iceland. I have some people I met at Midgardsblot that we're going to get together, and they're going to give me some tours of Iceland, and we're going to record a few videos together as well. So there's a lot of really cool things coming for the channel, and I'm really excited to share them with you. But with that, for like the Irish content and taking a month off, I'll be working the entire month. It's not like I'm not, but it's just one of those things. I'm not going to be able to produce content while recording like nonstop. It's just me here, and so truly, this is never going to be a better time to sign up for the supporting of this channel because obviously, supporting this channel makes sure these videos get made. It's just me here filming, writing, getting all these interviews, editing everything. It's so much work. And it's going to be a lot of work for Ireland. So if you want to support the channel, truly Patreon, YouTube members, this is the best way to do it. And the Patreon and YouTube members are going to get a lot of really good stuff during Ireland. So I'm going to start uploading all of the interviews unabridged to Patreon. Obviously, these hour-long interviews get cut down to like 20 or 15 minutes. And so these unabridged interviews are going to be available only on Patreon and YouTube supports members. And then I'm only going to be doing more vlogs there and probably like smaller rune stones or stone circles, stuff like that going to be on Patreon as well. So truly, I need your help to make these videos, to share them with you. I'm very grateful to do this for a living, very grateful to make these videos, but I truly couldn't do it without the help of all you amazing people. So a lot of really cool things coming. So really excited to share them with you. And I think that hopefully that shares like the balance of this content. I think talking about this Celtic and the Irish, the Scottish, the Norse, like all these things really interest me. And I'm just excited to share them all with you coming up. Let's see here. Anyone have any questions? Let me pull through here. I will have to get off here. I'll probably give it another 4 minutes here. So it'll be a 45-minute long, a 45-minute long live stream. I am pretty tired. I've been driving a lot lately. Do you meet former Christians who become pagans who are struggling? From Promethean Kitchen. Yeah, so this is actually very common. I get a lot of questions of people struggling because they converted over into paganism and they really struggle with the fear of damnation, the fear of being wrong, persecution by family. This is very common. I do have a video on this. I think it's literally called for my advice to pagans converting from Christianity, or my advice from Christians to pagans, or something like that. So I do have a video on that where I go into a lot of detail. But my main advice is this is something I still struggle with. My mother is still very Christian. She may very well watch this video, and it's just one of those things we're in conflict with very often. But the most important thing is that we're on this pagan path, we're on this spiritual path to become better versions of ourselves, to connect more to our natural world, and to be grateful for the lives we live and for what's done for us through the act of ceremony and ritual. And through the lens of these ancient traditions and practices. And so I think showing, your happiness that you're gaining from this, that's what we're trying to achieve, right? And so sharing that with them, not necessarily in a preachy way, like, oh, this is because of Odin or Thor, but just sharing the fact that you're happy in your life, I think eventually wins over. And that's just all I'm trying to do with my family, is just sharing with them, like, I'm happy. And isn't that the goal of life? Isn't that the goal, to become more connected to your true self? And I think a lot of people get into the spiritual journeys, and a very big conversation right now between me and people that we're at the ayahuasca retreat is, after you have these eye-opening experiences, after you've seen the other side, there is a moment of a leap of faith that once you get into this, it can get really scary really quickly, accepting some of the things you have to come to terms with. But taking that leap of faith and working towards who you're really meant to be, and our more natural state as humanity. I think these pagan religions are more akin to the spirituality that we're meant to follow, not these spiritualities that were used to control us, to use to create these kingdoms and this control, because that's what Christianity really was used for, was to create control over people. Whereas these pagan religions are more akin to what we were meant to be as a person. So it can be hard to get over that fear. But what is on the other side is truly incredible, and I never look back in fear anymore. It's still hard, especially as an American, especially in a place that Christianity seems to only be getting bigger. But yeah. Will you someday write a book about your spiritual travels, the spiritual places of Scotland and other places? Yes, I have many ideas for books. So it's just going to take time. I do want to get the sequel to A Yule Story done. I'm planning to get that done before the summer and to have that out. And then my next book, I think, needs to be like an introduction into Norse paganism, or at least my perspective into Norse paganism. And that's going to take some time. And I'm not sure if I'll seek self-publishing with that, or I'm going to try to find a publisher so it has larger reach. But then I also have an idea. I've already actually written a little bit of it. Is a book about my wanderings, a mixture of the have 'em all and my personal things that I figured out. And so the one section will be like, oh hey, I can win a friend over with a piece of bread. And me talking about all the friendships I've built over just buying someone coffee or buying someone a beer, and just the things I've personally learned traveling about, gratitude of how to build friendships, and mixing it with this old Norse wisdom. So that's another book that I've blueprinted. I actually already have a chapter done. I just haven't had the time to commit to writing it. So yeah, I have a lot of ideas coming up for books. All right. Let's see here. Okay, I think my mind is spinning enough at all these comments. I mean, so happy. We've had well over 100 people this late. So very grateful for all of you joining in. Thank you for everyone who shared your opinion on this. Wait, Darius, you asked a good question, Darius. Did you get a new apartment? I mean, no. Welcome to the Comfort Inn off of in Green Bay. It's so nice. So yeah, no, thank you all so much for joining in. I just had this idea. I had no plan when I woke up this morning to do a live stream, but I just wanted to talk to all of you, communicate with you. I know it's been a bit since I've really shown my face on YouTube, so I wanted to share it a little bit more. Hope you've enjoyed this conversation. If you're watching this video after the fact and you've watched for all 45 minutes, thank you so much. Please comment after the fact any additional thoughts you've had on this. Is paganism, Norse paganism, disappearing? Again, like I said, my thought is like it's dying down in popularity, but I don't think it's going to disappear. And I think that's a good thing. So excited to keep talking about it, excited to continue to make videos for this channel. I have so many great things, and truly I couldn't do it without the support of all the people who support this channel, just by watching the videos as well. So thank you all so very much. I'm heading off of here. Have a good night, and I will see you next week, I think, for the video releasing. I'll get it done really quick, of Heiki Lunta or Heiki Lunta. It's going to be a weird one. So I hope you enjoy it. Have a great night, and thank you so very much.